on?
Mm-hmm.
Hello everybody, my name is Chris. It's become our custom to make a low production value little video when we release the wines, just for me to throw in my 5 cents about what I think of the vintage and the wines. So we just shoot it like this in the winery, the coffee machine, and we've had numerous instances of dogs walking into the frame sometimes, so if that happens, I'm sorry, not really sorry. And if you hear birds tweeting or the coffee machine making a noise, that's just part of the deal. Got my coffee, I'm ready to talk, and I like to speak very off the cuff with these things. I don't prepare anything. I do know the wines pretty well, so I don't really know what I'm going to say yet. I'll just start talking and see what comes out. The vintage 2025. There's the old joke about the Bordelais winemakers that when asked what's the best vintage you've ever seen or you've ever worked, it's always the one they've just done, because that's the one they're busy selling. So I don't want to come across like that, but I think I have hopefully earned some trust in that I've been very frank in my appraisals of previous vintages. So hopefully you won't think I'm just a guy talking up a vintage. That is easy to find in the wine industry. So 2025, I remember it quite well. I should, I'm not that old. It's a vintage that started a bit late. We normally start picking somewhere between let's say the 17th, 18th of Jan and the 20th of Jan. That's normally kickoff. And I remember this year we'd had a lovely cold winter leading up to the growing season. I remember there was snow on the mountains. We had enough rain, and we had a very even bud break because we'd had so much nice cold. So yeah, we started picking a fair bit later. It doesn't sound like much, but in my world it's quite a lot. We started picking on the 27th of Jan, almost at the end of the month. And right off the bat, it was pretty clear that we had a good vintage on our hands. You might recall last year I was very excited about the 2024 wines. Even though our yields are very, very low, I thought we made some of our best wines. And I'm sitting on a good vintage here. I don't know when we're going to have a mediocre vintage again. It's been a little while. I think you'll remember my feelings about 22 as a vintage were lukewarm. But yeah, 2025 we're sitting on a very, very nice vintage. What makes it a bit different to some of the recent vintages is, as I said, it was late to start, and the ripening conditions throughout the season were mild. Mild and even, steady as she goes. It never really felt rushed, which is also lovely from a logistical point of view. Obviously, the place where I can really add value as a winemaker, because of the way that we make wines, where we prohibit ourselves from doing any kind of manipulation to the grape juice. It is just what it is, and that's very, very important for me philosophically. So the places where I can really add value are at the press tray, so deciding when to cut the press, and all the vineyards behave quite differently actually in the press. So you get to know them over time and how they're going to perform in the press. And that's a lot to do with just intimacy with the vineyards. And the other place where I really can add value is on the picking decision. Because especially in the slightly warmer areas like the Swartland and Skirfbach, your picking window is very short. If you really want to just hit that sweet spot where the wine is ripe, but not overripe, and still has lovely natural acidity, that's really important for us. And that picking window can be very, very narrow in those areas, so you have to be really on the ball. And I have to live with those decisions forever, because once you've picked the grapes, that's it. We can't change anything about it. And I've noticed the last few years that my brain isn't quite as good as it used to be at retaining information and quick recall and that kind of thing. But I think I'm actually getting, despite that fact, I think I'm getting a bit better at this winemaking thing, because it's a very humbling profession in many ways. I think I'm getting a bit better at it, just purely through experience and purely through intimacy with the vineyards that we have and that we work with, and understanding how they behave, and learning how to read the growing season and look at the canopy and the crop load and tasting and looking at the weather and making decisions based on that, and a few good years of experience now. So the result is basically that I think we've turned out, I don't want to use too much hyperbole here, but I think we've turned out a very, very good vintage in 2025, and I think the overall sentiment in the Cape about the vintage 2025 is very, very positive. Especially actually some of my friends that make Syrah, for them it's one of the best Syrah vintages they've ever seen. And we'll talk a little bit about our little Syrah project also at the end, I think. But yeah, that's 25 in a nutshell. Late, steady, even, very good, very few problems. And it was actually, it was a dream to work. We had a lovely, strong cellar team. Nice interns, and obviously our permanent guys are experienced at this point. So yeah, you do start to feel it over the years, though. I mean, I'm not an old man, but I when I was in my early 30s, it was not that difficult to be driving a truck up the coast at 2 in the morning to go and pick grapes. It was pretty easy, very high energy levels. I still feel like I have good energy levels, but I'm definitely starting to feel the pain a little bit earlier in the harvest now. Sort of 2 weeks in, I start feeling it a bit, where I used to be able to go close to the end before I really started suffering. But in any case, it's there are worse ways to make a living. I really enjoy it very, very much. Okay, let's run through the wines. I always try to keep these videos to 10 minutes, and I've never managed to, and sometimes they run over 20 minutes. So I'm going to be brief with the wines, I promise. Obviously, if you're watching this video, we've opened the mailing list shop. We've made a big effort to make it more robust. We've broke the internet once or twice, and it's not that funny the second time around. It leaves people upset, and I'm really sorry about that. If you were negatively affected with last year's Magnum campaign, I sincerely apologize, and I won't let that happen again. We're going to do it completely differently this year with the Magnums in November, but that's not what we're talking about now. Now we're talking about our new 2025 wines. So we'll start this way and we'll head that way. So these are just props, previous vintage bottles. I just need something with a label on it so that I can talk about the wine. So we've got Hereafter here, and I think many of you understand that this wine is becoming super important for us because of its utility. Not only the fact that it's just such a lovely wine to drink. It serves a couple of really important purposes for us. First and foremost, we need to plant vineyards, and we have planted some vineyards on our own land in the Swartland, and we have grower friends that have got some stunning young Shannon that they have planted and will be planting. Growers that we've worked with for quite a while, and whose farms we think are just amazing for growing Shannon. So we need to keep on planting very good genetic material for the future, and I need a place to catch that because I can't put it into any of the old vineyard wines. Obviously, that would be wrong. So Hereafter here is playing a crucial role for that, and it's also a great place for me to experiment with potential future Cartology vineyards, because Cartology is still the most important wine for us by some distance in terms of what it can do and how it can get the idea of South African heritage wine out there. Anyway. So the wine itself this year, Hereafter here, it's lovely. It's got quite a how can I say it, like a silky mellow character, and this kind of firm acid that sort of holds the wine together and carries the wine. And when I was busy tasting it with my wife a few nights ago, we tasted through all the wines together and talked about the wines. And I'm not one of these sommelier type people, with no disrespect, that can rack off every berry and every flavor in the history of man when describing a wine. Our often describe them in personified and sometimes emotional terms, and how they make me feel, and that kind of thing, and that's more helpful for me. So Hereafter here is a charming wine, I would put it that way. Very charming, very friendly. It's an incredibly good deal, actually, if you look at what you're getting for what it costs. Very, very, very good vineyards, and it's got this, how can I say, it's sort of like pear and sort of savory herbs. We talked about laurel, bay leaf. It seems to have like a touch of bay towards the finish. So I think it's a very nice vintage of Hereafter here. And these vineyards, they're young now. Some of the older ones that we're busy trialing are obviously older, etc. But the wine logically will just continue to get better as the years progress, and I think we're seeing that as a trend. And many of you really love the 23 and 24, as did I, and I think 25 really follows on with that. I don't think you'll go wrong getting a few bottles of this for weeknight drinking, if you know what I mean. Okay, so that's Hereafter here. And by the way, just because it's young vines doesn't mean they're not special vineyards. Very good sites, and dry farmed bush vine, Shannon. I love bush vines. I love I think bush vines have a lot of built-in advantages when it comes to making this kind of white wine. Okay, that's Hereafter here. And we have Cartology. This is a bottle of 23. So Cartology 2025. Because of the quality of 2025 as a vintage, putting Cartology together is one of my favorite things that I do every year. The thought process normally starts in September, and by the end of October I have a very good idea of how the wine is going to look. I don't like to judge the wines and be critical of the wines in barrel when they're very, very young. I normally wait until August, September before I really start critically assessing the wines. And getting a very good feeling for what is going to be the very best representation of the vintage, an honest, high quality representation of the vintage. So Cartology, it's 9 really tremendous old parcels of Shannon between the ages of 40 and 60, and then of course the lovely old parcel of Semyon in Franschhoek, planted in 1936 by a man who died in 1935. So there's something funny going on there. I'm pretty sure the vineyard is a bit older than what it says on paper, but we can talk about that later. Yeah, I remember my notes on Cartology. It had quite a striking, like high-toned citrus nose. Beautiful, almost like a clementine cake nose, and then it's bright, and the palate's very confident. It's what's the best way of putting it? Sure-footed. It's a lovely, confident wine. And Suzanne used the term slow burn. I think that's really cool. It's got a lovely kind of slow burn, lingering effect on the palate. It sticks around, and there is. It's really cool that in South Africa we can make wines that are our own thing. That really belong to the history of the Cape. We've got tremendous genetics in this country, courtesy of 3 centuries of selection myself, followed by the early nursery programs starting in the 50s. So, our claim to make very South African wines isn't just soil, climate, and culture. It's also genetics. We've got a fantastic bit of quite unique Shannon genetics here, and Cartology really catches that idea of South African heritage wine. I'm very proud of the 25. I think it's an absolute beauty. This is the wine that probably gets the most TLC from me, because it's been my pet project since the very beginning, as you know. And it's the 15th bottling of Cartology, and I still feel like we've just started making wine, but I guess we have been doing it for a short while now. And when we had the 10th vintage in 2020, we bottled a few Jeroboams, 3-litre bottles. So we've gone and done the same for the 15th year. Those are not in the shop now. They will be sold along with the magnums in October, November, towards the end of the year, leading up to the festive season. Yeah, I think for those long-term Cartology fans like me, If you buy some of this wine and drink some early and put some away, you'll be very pleased. It's really a lovely wine. Really good palate weight this year. It's sort of settled into a nice pace, if you know what I mean. The cadence of the wine is good. It's not over the top. It's not overripe. It's certainly not underripe. It feels well proportioned. I think that's the best way to put it. I'm very, very pleased with that wine. Yeah. So that's Cartology 25, and then we'll speak about the single origin Shannons. I don't know which vintages I've got here. Anyway, it doesn't matter. These are supposed to represent bottles of 2025 wine, of course. These are the two granite soil wines. Might need a bit of hyperbole for Fire by Night. I was pretty confident that last year that we'd had the best one, you know, and that we wouldn't see that kind of level again for maybe a couple of vintages. But yeah, 25 good. This is definitely for my palate the best Fire by Night that we've put into a bottle. Yeah, the vineyards that I really favour for this are one that grows on the ridge in quite shallow soils. It dries out quite quickly. We pick it quite early. It makes very intense, quite salty wines, quite limey wines. And then there's a second wine in the lee of a little kloofie, a second vineyard, sorry, planted in 78, called Alheit Vineyard, that I really love. And that you could bottle that on its own. It makes a very, very complete wine. A little more, you know, luxurious is the wrong word, but it's got quite a bit of power, but it keeps its acidity very, very well. So in this vintage, the Ridge Vineyard and the Alheit Vineyard are the two contributors, and that noise you can hear in the background literally is my dog snoring, and that's fine. We're just gonna keep rolling. There's nothing we can do about it. And snore. So yeah, Fire by Night 2025 sublime wine. Like very much in that classic Fire by Night Paardeberg, our interpretation of what we think the Paardeberg wants to do. It's very easy to make big fat wines there, but I think if you get your pick right in terms of ripeness, and you can have a very athletic wine with really lovely acidity and that sort of mouth-watering sapidity that comes with Paardeberg, and kind of green citrus. There's this natural bush that grows on the farm, kapokbos. It's like a wild rosemary type thing. It makes this little cotton white flower. So in August, the whole farm is kind of, the ridges are white, and it's got a specific smell. It's a bit like fresh thatch, a little bit sweeter, and the wine really reminds me of that too. So that's a wine I'm going to be keeping back a fair bit of Fire by Night 2025 for our library. I think it's a pretty great wine. Okay, then the second granite soil wine. Obviously, this is granite soil Paardeberg, so mountainside Swartland. Then we have Nautical Dawn. This is seaside Stellenbosch, from a vineyard that's just year after year shown itself to be one of the best Shannon vineyards in the Cape. We've got friends that also make wine from the same parcel. So the parcel stretches down the Sinai Hill. And Bernard Bradell, you should try his wine, Signs of Sinai. He's making wine from a section just under us. Excellent wine. And then Paul Riordan, I think, is making a little bit of wine from just above our section. Also great stuff. So it's just a brilliant vineyard. We've got I think, an outstanding part of the vineyard. And yeah, Bernard also contributes a lot to how well it's being farmed these days. Yeah, so it is a great site. Granite soil, you're only 60 meters above sea level, but from up there you can literally see the waves breaking on a clear day. And that southeast wind pumps through the vineyard for the whole growing season. And it does keep the temperatures are quite moderate. So you'd think it's cooler, it'll ripen later, but it ripens quite early. And I think it's because it's in that optimal ripening band for a longer period of time per day. We've had such a strong run of Nautical Dawn vintages over the last few years. You know, there hasn't really been a dud. I can't remember one. I'm trying to. You know, and I think 23 was exceptionally good. 2020 was exceptionally good. I don't think that this particular vintage of Nautical Dawn, for whatever reason, is quite at that like apex where 2023 was, and where 2020 for my money where 2020 was. But I do think it's still an absolutely outstanding vineyard, and it's produced a beautiful wine again this year. It's just that we've seen such high heights, that I have to be honest with you and say I can't tell you that this is better than 23 or better than 24, whatever. It's on the same level as many of the good vintages that we've had from that site. So it's a pretty lovely wine. This is, again, it's typical, and it's so cool to see how the patterns continue throughout the years. We're starting to see really, really definite characteristics associated with the site, because you've got four single origin Shannons here made by the same guy in the same winery with the same philosophy, the same level of execution and care, and seeing dramatically different wines. And that's the place, and that's the whole point. And that, Shannon is such a great vehicle for our landscape. It's such an honest, noble grape. And this site is just fantastic. So the characteristic traits that we'll see here are, quite a loud, maybe expressive is the wine euphemism. Nose, normally like a very ripe spon spec, going into stone fruit almost. You can't really say a nose is tangy, but it's got that element to it. It's a very bright, bordering on exotic nose relative to the rest of the wines. And the palate's also very, very confident, very bright, great acidity. It's slightly less ripe this year than in some other years. It's just under 13 alcohol, so it's kind of the same as 5 by night. So it's super interesting to drink those wines next to each other, the 2 granite soil wines. And I hope that if you're a fan of the whole concept of the single vineyard thing, that you buy a couple of these and open them next to each other. It's an awesome study in sight, even though the soil is very, very similar. So that's Nautical Dawn 25. It's an incredible vineyard. Okay, then we are going north. We're going up to the Scotspark area. These 2 puppies. I'm just going to have a bit of coffee. What can I say, that hasn't been said? I don't want to sound repetitive. It's red sand over red clay. There's a bit of gravel between the 2 layers. Got about 1.5 meters of sand, getting heavier as it goes down. Little gravel strata, red clay, large vines, nice and getting on a bit in age. The vineyards for Hereafter are between their mid-40s and late 50s now. Wide spaced, low rainfall. We had enough rain in this season those vineyards really did well. I mean, they really, really did well. They just looked so happy and healthy, beautiful canopies, lovely crop load, just the right balance. Other vineyard people will know exactly what I mean when I say that. Obviously, not all of you guys understand vineyards. It's okay. I don't understand maybe what you do. I'm not a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. But from my point of view, from what I do, assessing the quality of a Shannon vineyard by sight and by taste of grapes, these places are just phenomenal. They're really, really good. And Hereafter in tank was probably the standout wine for the year. And now that they're in bottle, it's still it's beautiful. So it's that here we normally see kind of ripe apple, orange oil, orange juice, that sort of spectrum, and almost always some kind of blossom, like some kind of white blossom. Some years it can be turned up quite a bit, and this year it's quite subtle, but it's definitely present. And then my wife used the term, Suzanne used the term when we tasted the wine, she says, the palate just feels far-reaching, which I thought was perfect. It is, the palate just rolls on and on. It's just far-reaching, and it's just mouth-filling, and then it's got this great, like, cleansing acid that underpins the whole wine, and it just carries on and on. So that's a really lovely Hereafter vintage. 24 was fantastic. This is fantastic. I'm so happy with this wine. And if I sound like I'm talking up the wines, you must keep in mind that our winemaking is not about how clever the winemaker thinks he is. It's really about the vineyard, the quality of the vineyard, and the way that it's farmed, particularly the natural potential of the site. And yeah, so I can say with confidence that it's an extraordinary vineyard, and it makes extraordinary wines most years, and it's done it again this year. And that's no fault of mine. I can apply exactly the same simple, careful, non-interventionist winemaking to a totally mediocre vineyard somewhere, and I'll get a totally mediocre wine. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It's the vineyard really is remarkable. Okay, and then it's brother vineyard. So this is on a farm called Odam. It's a Visser family, and Philip Muntz, who's farming very, very well. Big effort from them. So that's at 450 meters above sea level. Then not too far away is Alheit Alikante, which is the Van Loo family, farmed by Christian. Very bright, very good farmer, really committed, passionate farmer. And we've got two parcels there, one planted in 83 and one planted in 81. They're quite close together. They're stone's throw literally, and they're both just on like a soft southeastern slope at about 540 meters above sea level, so quite a bit higher up than Hillcrest. And on a ridge, and often in the growing season, you have these mists from the Atlantic coming over, and the mornings will stay quite cool. It's also just remarkably good genetic material of relatively mysterious origin. We don't know exactly where it came in from. I know that Wimbasi and his dad planted it in the early 80s, and they've got cuttings. They're taking cuttings from a friend's vineyard in the valley, old vineyard, and dog, and whatever they got hold of there, it really is something. And the genetics is fantastic. The position is extraordinary. The farming is totally committed. And then if you have a good vintage like this, where you've had enough rain and the canopy's happy and everything goes right, you get wines like that, which are for what I like about white wine, South African sort of white wine like this. That really, it just makes me so happy. On the nose is quite a lot of ripe pear. It usually has that sort of pomelo, that like bright pomelo kind of, or like almost pomelo oil somewhere. And it's a little bit this year as well. Some years it has that very intense cold rooibos thing going on. It's not so much this year. This year it's more pear. But yeah, the palate is just, it just goes on and on. I'm really, really happy with the wine. On the nose, it's talking to you, and the nose of this wine will grow a little dip. It'll go up and down over time, and if you catch it on a high ebb, it'll be quite something. But if you manage to open the bottle, at a time when the nose is a little bit quiet, don't be alarmed. When you have a sip of that wine, it'll be like walking into a large ornate room through a small door. It's just. The palate is electric. It's really something. Okay, that's enough about the Shannons. Here we have our old and wonderful friend, Monument, grown by the Roux family on the Franschhoek fruit farm called La Colline. Quick update on the status of the vineyard after the Franschhoek fires this season. The top of the parcel, which is actually the part that makes this, was nailed. Despite the diligent efforts of the family to do what they could, a spark flew into the grass and it just went. So a section of the top was damaged this year. We still had enough grapes to actually make a wine 2026, so we have a wine, and that's also in large part thanks to Ryan and the good people at Old Road Wines in Franschhoek. It's just such a great industry. They, as soon as they knew about the fire in the block, they take the section just between our two sections, and it's so lucky to have another winemaker that you can phone and say, hey, have you been recently? And if I've just been there, I'll phone Ryan and say it looks like this, or the grapes taste like that. It's a lucky industry. And Ryan phoned and just said, hey man, if you guys are in trouble, we can help you with some grapes, which ended up happening. So thank you. This is awesome. The 2025 wine is kind of classic La Colline, very textured, very deep. These wines never have high acidity, but they do have very good pH. I know that's boring for non-wine people. I respect that. On the nose, that sort of candied rind, bitter orange, marzipan, that kind of world. And on the palate, mellow sounds wrong, but it is a more relaxed wine than the Shannon's. It's a more comfort food kind of wine. Very good on the table. Lovely with a meal. Doesn't try to dominate anything, but there's a lot going on in the glass if you give it a chance. Yeah, very, very textured wines. So it's a good vintage for Monument. As I said, 25. We haven't really got any duds. Okay. And yeah, I mentioned earlier that the vineyard's planted in 1936, and it's that crazy old genetics that we have in the Cape with the mixed colours of Semillon growing together. The man who planted it died in 1935, so I don't know how he did that. So the record keeping back then wasn't top shelf. So it's very likely that the vineyard was planted quite a bit earlier than 1935, but we just don't have any evidence of that. In any case, it doesn't matter. It's mature. It's well farmed. It's a classic pre-industrial, very, very South African type of vineyard, and it's a huge privilege to work with it. And it's just a great family that farms it. So that's Monument. And then we have Yamarant Weingarten 2025. This is the last let me just compose myself. This is the last vintage farmed by Hans, my great friend and mentor, wonderful man. We're sitting in his building that he built. Yeah, he passed away in November last year, so we've been missing him a lot, and I think he would be thrilled with this wine. It's the same thing that I said about Fire by Night. You know, when the wine reaches these high points where it's you struggle to imagine that it could get much better for that particular site. Fire by Night is there in this year, I think. And yeah, Yamarant, again, it was relatively slow ripening, late-ish vintage, full flavor. The wine is so exotic on the palate, on the nose, excuse me. Yeah, it's the site seems to be coming into its own very much. It's cold and windy up here. The soil is poor, but a grapevine is a remarkable thing and can cope with all kinds of tough conditions and manages to produce a crop, even if it's a small crop. Most vintages, and yeah, 25 was a reasonable crop, not very big, unfortunately. In fact, on the smaller side, I think we got 4,400 liters this year, which isn't very much. 2025, but the wine really is something. Yeah, exotic, a little bit limey, sort of sweet oatmeal, tremendous drive on the palate, and yeah, it's got a. If you're used to the heritage wines that we make, then this might seem a little bit, odd or out of place, but I'd highly encourage you to try some of it, especially this vintage. It's very, very good as a standalone white wine. It's extremely energetic. Yeah, very full flavored, outstanding acidity, and it finishes very, very long. And because it's not just Shannon. There's quite a few grapes holding hands in here. Some Roussanne, some Chardonnay, Verdelho. Shannon is about 50 vineyard vines that we don't really mention. There's a tiny pinch of Muscat. So yeah, the site's being interpreted through quite a few different grapes, but everything that grows in the field goes into the bottle. So yeah, it's kind of a complex wine, as it should be. There's a lot going on the nose, and it's also a wine that ages extremely well. I've had some bottles with a bit of time, and yeah, they're very, very good. Especially with the modern closures that we've been using for the last few years. If you look at the numbers from a winemaking point of view, it's easy to see why this wine doesn't fatigue. It just keeps on going and going and building complexity in the bottle. So that's Yamarant, and yeah, we miss Hans, and he would have been very, very pleased with this particular wine. No, Hans, this is Hans's place that we rent. he still bought wine every year, paid for it and everything. He didn't have to, but he was really a wonderful guy. And this is his wine that we've always made for him and with him, as sort of a partnership. So yeah, that's Yamarant Vine Garden 2025. I'd encourage you to try it. I think you'll enjoy it. And then that's the end of the wines, although I would like to give an honorable mention to another little project that we're busy with, which you may or may not be aware of. It's this bottle, Fogwell, and I'm mentioning it because when we took the 2025 bottles home and tasted them a few nights ago together as a couple, and chatted through the wines, we ended with this just to see what the 25 is like, and if all the Syrah friends that we have are onto something about the 25 vintage for Syrah, and it's a very nice wine. It's really a hell of a wine. So you can look forward to 25 Fogwell. I know many of you have bought the 24 Fogwell and have enjoyed that very, very much. It's a tiny production. We have two small vineyards, one through our friend Donovan in the Swartland, tiny little berries on schist soil, and another one on the Polkadra Hills in Stellenbosch that makes quite peppery wine. So two small Syrah vineyards that hold hands in this bottle, and yeah, I'm exceptionally proud of this wine. I think it's very, very good, and because it's so tiny, the production, and we don't really promote it at all, it just carries on. It's developing a really nice following just organically on its own. Some really great importers very keen on the wine. So have a look at Fogwell. It's its own business. It's got its own website and everything like that. But if you're a Syrah person, I think you'll fall in love here. Okay, so that's the 2025 vintage. I'd just like to end off by saying that South African wine scene right now, obviously the industry is under pressure. We know that, and that it's not plain sailing at the moment globally, especially from a geopolitical sense, and also in economically, a lot of people are under the pump. So I would encourage you just to support the South African wine industry where you can. I know that wine is sometimes considered a luxury spend, but we've got some incredible wine producers here. Very committed people, very good at their craft. And then I'd just like to say to you that I know that you have options. I know that there are really good wineries out there. So it gives me tremendous joy to see your enthusiasm and the amazing feedback we get about the wines from you. I really appreciate it. Perhaps you think it doesn't mean anything to me, but it really does. I really appreciate it a great deal. I sometimes have people send me a picture of a bottle they're having at a family braai or an anniversary or a birthday or something like that, and that's the wine that they chose. And that does mean a great deal. So yeah, that's me signing off. Thank you very much for your attention, and enjoy the shopping experience. I hope that our new system and courier system and everything works well, and thank you again, much appreciated.